Homestead-Miami Speedway could be hosting a championship race in 2026, and Kyle Busch calls out Carson Hocevar on the Happy Harvick podcast. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports to discuss today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight in those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a couple paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Tyler Tomasi's 2025 F&F scheme that we'll see this weekend at Martinsville. Scheme looks really solid in my opinion. I do like the gray. I like how much utilization you're using on the car. It does look really solid, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Martinsville. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Tyler Tomasi's 2025 LA production scheme that we'll see at Bristol in a couple weekends from now. This is really awesome. LA Production is one of the best NASCAR YouTubers out there currently at the moment. Makes amazing content, and it's awesome to see him. The only other YouTuber I think I've seen have a car like that is Aric Almirola. So this is a really cool accomplishment for LA. Congratulations on this great opportunity for LA, and I think the car absolutely looks incredible. Looking forward to seeing you on the racetrack at Bristol. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Homestead truck race. As it was reported by Trey Ryan, aka NASCAR Insights, that with Homestead now having an overtime finish with going 39 straight laps, I believe, they had the 18th straight truck race without an overtime finish. They're now only 2 races away from tying the record, which I believe goes back to 2020. The truck series has been the cleanest series since the end of 2023. It seems like whoever talked to them after the truck series race at Phoenix may have scared the drivers because I think the racing's been solid and it's been very clean as well. And I think this clean racing will help when some of these guys move up the series in the next couple years. Pretty impressive to see the truck series continue to be clean and have 18 straight races without an overtime finish. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Xfinity overtime finishes. As it was reported by NASCAR Insights once again, that with Homestead going to overtime at the end of the race, this is the 4th overtime finish in the first 7 races of 2025. This is the most in Xfinity Series history for the first 7 races of the year. Obviously, we wanted to see a long green flag run at the end of the race, but that did not end up happening after Taylor Gray spun out. But NASCAR, for some reason, wasted 6 or 7 laps under caution to go to overtime. A little frustrating, if you ask me, that we had a long overtime. Basically, went to overtime. We could have gone green with 3 or 4 laps to go. But NASCAR likes a lot of that drama, so I'm not surprised or shocked to see this. But I do wish they would have been able to go to regulation and not have another overtime finish, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about William Byron, Kyle Larson, and Alex Bowman. As it was reported by Joseph Straley from the Toby Christine Network that William Byron, Kyle Larson, and Alex Bowman are currently the top 3 drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series standings. This is the first time the Hendrick Motorsports had 3 drivers inside the top 3 in the points since July 2014 when I believe it was Jeff Gordon, Dale Jr., Jimmy Johnson in no particular order. And speaking about Chase Elliott's only 6 in points right now, and if Chase Elliott only had 9 more points, he'd be currently 4th in the standings. That would be the first time, I believe, for the history of Hendrick Motorsports, they'd have the top 4 in points, but it's very close for Chase as he's had a solid year. Hendrick's had a strong season. Of course, Kyle Larson picked up the win today at Homestead, and Hendrick's looked really strong to start out the 2025 year. Byron's been super consistent, had a little bit of a bad finish, but Bowman and Larson have also looked really good to start the year. And I think that speed is going to continue throughout the remainder of the year. Congratulations to all 3 drivers having a strong season. Also, Chase Elliott's looked really good. Good to see Chase Elliott continue to show the pace and speed that he's had. Good for them to run really well, especially. Now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Fox Sports. Now on Friday afternoon, Adam Stern put this tweet out as well, but IndyCar is basically promoting the upcoming IndyCar race that's going to take place at Long Beach on April 13th. And they had a really strong and really good ad. Now IndyCar's had some issues with their broadcasting throughout the early portion of the season, but when it comes to their advertising for the races, they have been nailing it and have been killing it. I think this ad's really good. It goes to the punch. Now, obviously, they still did the fastest racing on earth, which got a lot of controversy with the NHRA very recently, but I think the ad was a really strong message, and I think it's a really good ad, all things considered. I get why people from the NHRA world do not like it, because NHRA is still faster than IndyCars, but NHRA is only fast going in a straight line. They're not fast in a circle completely. So while I understand why they were upset, I also understand why they're trying to do the promotion that they are doing. Nonetheless, I think it's really good promotion from IndyCar up to this point in the start of the season, and I think the advertisement is really, really awesome, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Wyatt Miller. Now on Saturday night, Wyatt Miller competed in his first ever limited late model feature event and was able, in his first ever start, was able to win his first ever limited late model win. Wyatt Miller, of course, is the nephew of Dale Jr., and Wyatt Miller is only, I believe, around 13 or 14 years of age currently at the moment. Wyatt Miller's been doing really good on the dirt side of things, and he basically made his limited late model debut a couple weeks ago, I'm pretty sure. And he's been really fast in everything he has gotten behind the wheel. Many people are really promoting this young man, and I think he's got a great chance and opportunity to be successful in motorsports long term. And he's been having a lot of success up to this point currently at the moment. Congratulations to Wyatt on picking up the win. I think he's got a lot of other starts scheduled with the Dem. I would have to think there's a chance he might be full-time in the series in 2026. Congratulations to Wyatt. Very talented, did an amazing and fantastic job, and a well-earned win for Wyatt Miller, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Chinese Grand Prix. Now, before the NASCAR Cup race took place, the IndyCar race took place, you had the Chinese Grand Prix take place early in the morning. Now, the racing itself during the event was not that compelling. Oscar Piastri won the pole, and Oscar Piastri pretty much ended up dominating the whole entire event, and he would come off the corner. Really, the only good thing from the race that I saw was some good battles in the mid-pack, but Oscar Piastri pretty much dominated and would come off the corner and win his first race of 2025 and his third career Formula One victory. Oscar Piastri earned the win. Really strong car over the weekend. His teammate Lando Norris did struggle a little bit, and he did end up finishing in second, but Oscar is someone that's going to be contending with his teammate Lando Norris for the championship this year. However, the story was off the racetrack, as Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, and Pierre Gasly were all disqualified after the Formula One race concluded. When is the last time we've seen not one, not two, but three drivers get disqualified at the end of the race? I believe it was an issue on the planking side of things to Lewis Hamilton, and I think there were some wing issues on the back of Charles Leclerc and Pierre Gasly's cars. Tough break for all those drivers, unfortunately, but it doesn't affect the running order. It does it actually a little bit because I believe Leclerc and Gasly had scored points. They no longer were scoring points there, but nothing changes with the winner. Oscar Piastri is the one who picks up the victory. So like I said, congratulations on picking up the win. And tough break for Lewis, who won a sprint race earlier this week, and Leclerc and Gasly for all getting penalties after the race. But sometimes you're going to have those situations where you're going to get penalties for you messing with the cars. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the IndyCar race from the Thermal Club. Now, this race was dominated for the most part by Pato O'Ward. He led around 50 or 51 laps of the race, and it looked like Pato O'Ward was going to run away with this thing. But not so fast. Alex Palou, who's always known for being a hard charger at the end of his races, who won the opener at St. Pete a couple weeks ago, he would charge his way up to the front on really fast red tires, as the red tires were the dominant car. He would pass Pat O'Ward with around 10 laps to go in this race and would charge out to near 10 to 11 second lead. And coming off the corner, Alex Palou was able to go back-to-back and pick up what is like his 15th or 16th IndyCar win, I think, at this point, and goes back-to-back to start the season. Alex Palou, well, he basically had a strong car over the weekend. Congratulations to him on picking up the win at Thermal Club in pretty dominating fashion. There was an incident between Devlin DeFrancesco and Scott McLaughlin early in the race, and they had a little bit of a shouting match after the race had concluded, which, if I look at the incident, it seems like Devlin DeFrancesco isn't taking blame, despite the fact that I think Devlin DeFrancesco was the one who caused the incident on the track. As for Palou, congratulations to him on winning. There were some major issues during the broadcast today. About 25, 26 laps into the race, the broadcast went dead. This seemed like it was an issue at the Thermal Club. I know that the Thermal Club people were trying to basically blame Fox for it, but it looked like to me maybe the power went out, which is really unfortunate. And tough break for Fox, so I think their coverage has been okay with IndyCar, and I can't really blame Fox for that situation. So tough break for everybody involved there. But once again, congratulations, Alex Palou, on picking up a well-earned and well-fought win. He's absolutely earned it. Good to see him pick up the win. He's been really strong, great this year. And two of the drivers who were dominant in the races pick up their wins. Nonetheless, congratulations to them on getting it done, and good for Palou to pick up the victory. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Progressive. Now, it was announced earlier this week, I believe it was on Tuesday, that Denny Hamlin will be sponsored by Progressive for 18 races in 2025. Now, obviously, we know Denny Hamlin was sponsored by them at Homestead-Miami Speedway this weekend. Denny Hamlin, of course, finished 5th with those colors for the first time. But they will be on the car for 17 more races this year, including this upcoming week at Martinsville. Their next race will be at Bristol. Another race they'll have is Worldwide Technology Raceway. If I do go to that racetrack, I'll be able to see that scheme. Should the Charlotte Roval, Phoenix, Chicago Street Course. I believe I saw Darlington a couple weeks from now. I think the Southern 500 they're going to sponsor. I think I saw Texas on there, if I'm not mistaken, that they're going to sponsor. And most of the rest of the schedule for 2025, they are going to sponsor. They obviously were the big replacement for FedEx, which left at the end of last year, and also Mavis Tire, which also left at the end of last year as well. I think Progressive coming on is a huge deal. They spent a lot of money to come in and invest into the sport. They, of course, have a lot of commercials, and I'm really hoping that we do get to see a Denny Hamlin commercial in the future with Flo and Jamie as well. It's a big deal because we weren't even sure what Denny Hamlin's future was going to be if things didn't work out here, but I think it's great that Progressive is coming on and sponsor Denny Hamlin for quite a few races in 2025. The big question is going to be, are they going to be back for more races after this season? That is definitely going to be a big question because there's only a one-year deal currently at the moment. I know the people over there working on trying to get a second year with Denny Hamlin because Denny Hamlin's contract's a little bit unknown at the moment right now, but I think it's a massive deal to see that Progressive will have 17 more races with Denny Hamlin this season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Aric Almirola. As it was confirmed on the CW broadcast throughout the event that Aric Almirola will once again drive the number 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing in the Xfinity Series this weekend at Martinsville. Aric Almirola is coming into Martinsville looking for his third straight win at the track as last year he swapped in the spring race and he also won the fall race as well. Aric Almirola has been off to a really strong start in 2025 in the NASCAR Xfinity Series as he finished, I believe, at third in Atlanta. He, of course, won in controversial fashion in Phoenix, getting into Alex Bowman and putting him in the outside wall to win. And then, of course, he did end up finishing second at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. He did not compete this weekend at Homestead as, of course, Justin Bonzanor got behind the wheel of the car. But Aric Almirola is the odds-on favorite going into this race. We know the number 19 car is going to be competitive in this event. And Aric Almirola is going to be the guy you're going to have to beat to get the win at Martinsville. Because Aric Almirola's been always good there. You go back to his Cup days. The last time he ran there in Cup in 2023, he almost beat Ryan Blaney. And I think that Almirola is going to be the favorite to go to victory lane. I expect the speed to be there. I expect the pace to be there. And I think Almirola will have the car to definitely go to victory lane. Yes, you're going to have to worry about guys like Justin Allgaier in the event, and Corey Day's making his Xfinity Series debut this weekend as well. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to have to beat Aric Almirola to pick up the win and pick up the victory. It's going to be tough to beat him, but I think some people will be good. But I think, again, it's going to be very tough to beat him at the end of the day, in my honest opinion. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how he does against the rest of the field. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, if you watch a NASCAR Cup Series race on Sunday afternoon, Kyle Larson came from basically on the top lane about 4 seconds back and charged his way up to the front and passed Alex Bowman after Bowman made a mistake with 8 laps to go and passed him and pulled out to near 1.2 second lead and was able to pick up his first win of 2025 and his 30th career NASCAR Cup Series victory. He becomes only the 30th driver NASCAR Cup history to reach that accomplishment. And after the race had concluded, when he was speaking in the media center, Kyle Larson was asked questions about how many wins do you think you could have if things had worked out a lot better. Well, Kyle Larson was speaking about having the 2021 car that he had, and he says that if he had the 2021 car, he would have probably about 50 Cup wins currently at the moment. But because of the next-gen car and the changes to the car, basically I've been seeing a little bit more competitiveness, and we've not seen someone completely dominate and get that many wins. What Kyle Larson is saying is absolutely true. With the next-gen car, we have seen a lot more competitive fields, and we've seen a lot less opportunities for a driver to completely dominate. In the next-gen era, the most wins someone has gotten in a season is 6 wins. William Byron did that in 2023, and Kyle Larson did that in 2024. But no one has had a 10-win season like Kyle Larson had in 2021. In fact, there's only been 2 times since 1999 where someone's won 10 races in a season. Jimmy Johnson in 2007 and Kyle Larson in 2021. Kevin Harvick came close to that in 2020 with 9, but Harvick only won 9 races that year, which is still incredible. I think Kyle Larson, with how much talent he is, if he had started Hendrick Motorsports right from the get-go in 2014 and maybe taken the 5 car, I think that Kyle Larson could have 50 to 60 wins if he had the car he had, because Hendrick was so dominant in the Gen 6 era, especially at the end of 2021. I think Larson definitely could have 50 Cup wins at this point. But what Kyle Larson's done in the next gen era has been pretty incredible. He's the winningest driver in this era with 14 wins. He's won 30 Cup races, and I think Larson will be in the conversation of not, let's say, being in the GOAT status by any stretch of imagination, but I think Larson will definitely be in the conversation of being in the top 15 and top 20 drivers of all time. I think he will get around 50 wins in his career, and I think Larson is speaking some truth. I do get why some people think it's some arrogance, but I think Kyle Larson has earned the right to be a little bit arrogant about how he performs, because Larson's a great driver, and he deserves the opportunities and chances that he gets with these teams. He did a really impressive job today at Homestead. He should have swept the weekend. We're going to talk about the incident from the Xfinity Series here in just a short little bit with Sam Mayer, but I think he's absolutely earned the right to kind of basically show a little bit of arrogance and cockiness, because Larson's been the best guy in the Cup Series the last few years, and Larson continues to do really great and amazing things in the sport, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Haiden Deegan. Now, usually we don't talk about motocross news on this channel, but we're talking about Haiden Deegan because it was reported a couple nights ago, I believe on Friday night, that Haiden Deegan was arrested on Friday. Now, he was apparently arrested, I believe, in Florida because he was street racing on the streets. And he did post for $1,000 bond, and he was released from jail, I believe, a couple hours after being detained. He was released a couple hours later and was back on the street. Now, some of his posts on social media, I will say how he's doing some of the emotion around it is definitely a little bit funny, but also at the same time, not the smartest thing to be doing after you've been street racing. Now, I'm going to say this about street racing, not the smartest thing to do. I get he's only around 18 or 19 years old currently at the moment, but not the smartest thing for someone who's 18 years old, who's got his life fully ahead of him, to be making a little bit of a bonehead move like that. And Haiden Deegan's had kind of like an arrogance in his career of motocross. You look at him, I think he's very talented, but it seems like he's always trying to get into rivalries with like Julian Bondare, I believe that's the guy's name, and other people in the series. He thinks he's one of the best drivers in the field, and again, he has the potential to be one of the best in the field, but he hasn't won a lot of races in 250 currently at the moment. If he ever thinks he wants to get to the top rank of motocross, he's going to have to get up there. He's not like his sister Hailie Deegan, who doesn't show any arrogance in her racing career, but Haiden Deegan is kind of like his father. His father was arrogant, but Brian Deegan could back up the cockiness a little bit on the track. Haiden Deegan, while he's talented, he hasn't all around proven that he can be that next big thing. He's got to clean up the arrogance a little bit and stop making mistakes like this, because he's going to have his life, he's got his life fully ahead of him, and I don't think he wants to ruin that. I really don't think he does. So I hope he can clean it up here very, very soon, because again, I think Hayden's a good driver. He's been solid, he's been fast, but he's got to clean up some of the stuff he's been doing, and the attitude's got to change a little bit. But I think when you're also a little bit younger, you're going to make some questionable decisions as a driver, regardless of what motorsport you're in. So while I do understand him trying to be a little bit cocky in a sense, I think Haiden does need to clean it up a little bit, because you don't want to get in a lot more trouble with the law by doing something stupid. Also, don't go street racing. I get he's 18 years old, but don't be street racing. This isn't Midnight Club, for crying out loud. Be smarter with it. Go and do that stuff on video games. Don't do it in real life. Not the smart decision by Haiden Deegan, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the CW. Now, it was reported on Friday that the CW was going to be starting to do remote broadcasts for this upcoming weekend's race at Homestead-Miami Speedway, or the race for Homestead. And they say they are going to be doing more of these remote broadcasts going forward for upcoming races in 2025, though they did not have announced what race exactly they are going to be doing. Again, they had their first remote broadcast this past weekend at Homestead, where we saw Sam Mayer kind of put Kyle Larson in a really, really bad position. And they were not at the track for the first time. Now, you compare this to Fox's coverage because Fox, when they've done the remote broadcast, they've been absolutely terrible and they have not been very, very good. So they really were expecting, hopefully they were going to do a really good job. Now, I've said this for the longest time. You need to be at the racetrack. I don't really understand what these networks are thinking. I get they want to try to save a little bit money, which I understand. But you know what's the best thing? Being at the racetrack. I don't get with what these broadcast companies want to do by basically having remote broadcasts. You need to be at the racetrack to see what's going on. Now, that being said, you compare the CW's remote broadcast to Fox's remote broadcast. They had some blunders for sure. They definitely did, but it wasn't as bad as Fox's. They did a solid job. It seems like they didn't really miss a beat. The only thing they really screwed up on, to me, was what happened on the last lap when Jeb Burton crashed really hard in the inside wall. They weren't able to get a really good replay. Also didn't do the best on the Daniel Dye stuff, even though they actually had a solid camera in turn number 3 when Daniel Dye spun during practice. That's about the biggest blunders they had overall, because I think that Parker Kligerman, Adam Alexander, Jamie McMurray, they have really good chemistry together, and I think the broadcasts have been good. But going forward, and I really hope this is one of only like 2 or 3, maybe 4 at the most, because I think they need to be at the racetrack. And I'm really hoping for this weekend in Martinsville, considering that Martinsville is not that far away from Charlotte. I really hope they go ahead and actually be at the racetrack, because being at the racetrack and putting on good broadcasts is the most important thing. I get they want to save money. I completely understand and respect that in a sense, but I'm not the biggest fan of remote broadcasts. I've never been a fan of them, and I really hope that they stop doing remote broadcasts going forward. Are they going to stop? Probably not at this point, because they want to do what they want to do, which again, I have to respect some of the things they're doing, but at the same token, at the same time, don't be doing this all the time. Just have a lack of these and don't have many of these remote broadcasts, to be honest with you. I just hope that they kind of back off with it, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, we've got multiple Kyle Busch stories we're going to be discussing today on the channel. But after the NASCAR Cup Series race concluded at Homestead-Miami Speedway, Kyle Busch put out a little bit of a teaser announcement on his Twitter page and his X page, and basically said 1851, aka 6:51 Eastern Standard Time. And this seems like this announcement will be scheduled for tomorrow night. Now, if you take a look at the quote tweets, his son Braxton Busch also put the big eye emoji, indicating that Braxton Busch might be involved in this announcement. Now, what could this announcement be for Kyle Busch? When we think about 1851, those are 2 of the most iconic numbers that Kyle Busch has had in his career. The 51, the winningest number, I believe, in Truck Series history, I'm pretty sure. And Kyle Busch won a lot in that number 51 truck. It had a lot of success. And the number 18 was a number that Kyle Busch drove at Joe Gibbs Racing, where Kyle Busch won like 50-something races, I think, in the Cup Series or something like that in that car. And Kyle Busch was extremely dominant, the winningest driver in the number 18 car, and won a lot of races in the Xfinity Series in that car as well. Some of the theories I have. Number 1, this might be like a late model race that him and Braxton Busch are going to do. Another one that I think about maybe is a Legends race. Some have kind of speculated it might be a Legends race, or both of them are going to be competing against each other. That is something that I think it could be possibly. It also could be a throwback announcement. Maybe we're going to see Eminem's throwback in some way, shape, or form, because Darlington's in a couple weeks from now. Maybe it could be something like that at Darlington. Maybe like it's something like that. I don't think this is Kyle Busch leaving Richard Childress Racing. As much as I think there's been a lot of speculation, and I know there's been no updates on the contract situation in the last couple weeks, we do know that Kyle Busch is in a contract year with RCR currently at the moment, and in prior years he's kind of indicated that he wants to leave, even though it doesn't sound like with how well they've been running. I know Homestead wasn't great for them, because I think a lot of people are looking at it saying, oh, Kyle Busch is going to announce retirement after not the greatest performance at Homestead, but Kyle Busch and the team said they got the car better. So I don't think it's Kyle Busch leaving RCR and going back over to Joe Gibbs Racing. I don't think that's what it is. My speculation is right now is that Kyle Busch is announcing either a throwback for Darlington, or it's going to be racing against his son, Braxton Busch. That's what my theory is currently at the moment right now, and I think that's very likely what is going to end up getting announced. It could be a paint scheme thing related to a throwback. We're just going to have to wait and see, but I don't think it's going to be announcing he's leaving RCR. It could be something to do with the Xfinity Series, because I think the 1851 are being used right now, so it's not true. But maybe it's something revolving around the throwbacks. I know Kyle Busch indicated not too long ago that he might be doing some Xfinity Series racing this year, but I don't know if that's going to be what it is. Again, my speculation is it's either a throwback announcement for Kyle, or it's going to be something that is related with his son and something involving racing. So we'll see what exactly it ends up being, but I don't think it's going to be Kyle Busch leaving RCR like some want to be, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Liam Lawson. Now, a couple days ago before the Cup Series race at Homestead-Miami Speedway took place, I believe it was Noah Gragson, was showing Liam Lawson around the Ford simulator and showing around the Ford plants. Show some of the Craftsman Truck Series trucks and also show some other things around the shop. And Liam Lawson, who is part of the Ford stuff currently at the moment, him being at Red Bull right now, we'll talk about his future of Red Bull here in just a second. But Liam Lawson was asked a question after getting behind the wheel of the simulator and testing, and people were asking, would you like to do some racing in America? And it seems like that Liam Lawson has now expressed interest in racing in NASCAR in the near future. And when he was asked about NASCAR, he said yes, 100%. Now, Liam Lawson currently is under contract racing with Red Bull in Formula One right now, even though there is a lot of unknown right now at this particular point if Liam Lawson is still going to be in that Red Bull car after his kind of bad performance unfortunately in China. But even though I think it would be a little bit unfair for him to lose his seat at Red Bull and go back to the second team, the Racing Bull team, considering the fact he's only had 2 races this year, I wouldn't understand why we're moving somebody around 2 races in a year. I think he needs a couple more races and a little bit of a bigger sample size, but it seems like whoever's in the second car, there's a lot of scrutiny on them, and we just got to remember that the Red Bulls are not as strong as they used to be, and that McLaren's a little bit faster. But as for Liam Lawson racing in NASCAR, I would absolutely love it. He's done some stuff with NASCAR. He did some stuff with the Red Bull stuff with Yuki Tsunoda, Connor Zilic, and Shane Van Gisbergen, who are Red Bull athletes. They got him behind the wheel, I believe, of a stock car, and I think at a dirt race before the Dakota weekend took place for Formula One. And I think it'd be really awesome to see Liam Lawson get the chance and opportunity to come over and do some stuff in NASCAR. It'd be really fun for him maybe make a start in the Xfinity Series. Again, there's that new approval process they've got, that open extension provisional that would definitely go into play for Liam Lawson with him racing in Formula One. So that'd be something that would definitely come into effect right there. I don't know if he would do like an oval. It would probably most likely be a road course, but you also got to look at the Formula One schedule. Formula One has a lot of races going on currently at the moment right now, and they've got a very busy schedule. I think they've got an upcoming race coming up in Japan this week. They do have a couple off weeks, I think, coming up later in the year. So maybe we see Liam make a couple starts this year. But again, I think the big focus for Liam is going to be whether he'll keep his seat at Red Bull after the next coming race at Japan. Again, they could be looking to switch and put Yuki Tsunoda behind the wheel, which again, I wouldn't understand personally, because I think that Yuki Tsunoda, again, I think he should stay with Racing Bulls, wait to see if Liam improves or not, and see if he can do a little bit better. But again, I would love to see this, and I kind of hope we do get to see the chance and opportunity for Liam Lawson to do some stuff in NASCAR. I think it would be very fun to see him do some stuff in that series, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch once again. Now, Kyle Busch is being interviewed, I believe, by either Steven Suff or Brandon Hopkins from Front Stretch, and Kyle Busch is asked a question around the short track package in short track racing in the next-gen car. And Kyle Busch is asked, do you think that short track racing has improved in the next-gen car over the last couple of years? And Kyle Busch says that the short track racing in the next-gen car has not improved, and he's not sure what exactly needs to be done to really help, and he doesn't understand exactly why the racing has not improved over the course of the last couple of years. Now, I'm going to say this about Kyle Busch, and I do agree with a lot of things that Kyle Busch says normally. I will say this, though. I do think the short track racing, fundamentally, when it comes to the car itself, I don't think it's improved in some areas. However, where I'm going to disagree is at saying it hasn't improved at all. I think especially with the Goodyear tires and what Goodyear has been doing to try to really help with the short track racing, I think they have done a really good job helping with the short track racing and getting it a lot better. Now again, I still think the car needs a lot of work. There's still a lot of error issues. There's still a lot of dirty air. You need the Goodyear tires to have a lot of fall off for the racing to be very, very good. And the thing is, it still is very difficult to pass, but it's still very difficult to pass regardless of what type of track you go to. Even though the intermediates are amazing, you have to go to a different line to make the racing really good in the intermediates. That's why the intermediates have been so successful. I think one thing that definitely, though, can help the short track racing get a hell lot better and make it better than what we're seeing right now, which again, I think it has improved, is finding a way to get more horsepower in the car. I understand why NASCAR doesn't want to add, because they keep thinking about adding manufacturers, which it does sound like they're looking to add more manufacturers here very, very soon. We're hearing the Honda and Dodge maybe. We know Dodge is likely coming to the Truck Series next year, and Honda apparently is also very interested in coming in NASCAR right now. But I think until then, until the new manufacturers come in, which could be 2 more years from now, until Honda makes the jump, but they would have to approve a body by September, I'm pretty sure. And again, if they wanted 2026, it would have been approved already at this point, with Honda's contract with IndyCar still being a little bit up in air. But again, I do think that the short track racing product has improved a little bit, but I think that if we can find a way to get more horsepower in the cars, I think it would take that next big step and really make the next big move going forward. So I hope that comes into play really, really soon, but I will disagree that it hasn't improved. I think it's improved a little bit, but I do think there's still work to be done and better things we can definitely do outside of just having a tire change. Hopefully we do get more improvements as time goes on, but I do think it's improved, but it's not improved enough in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Hooters. As it was announced and reported by Bob Pockrass on Friday, the Hooters has officially agreed to pay $900,000 to Hendrick Motorsports. Remember, it was announced last year that Hendrick Motorsports had filed a lawsuit against Hooters for unpaid money that they had been owed. I believe they were owed about $1.7 to $1.8 million. They basically sued them because Hooters, unfortunately, they've been struggling business-wise, and I believe they filed bankruptcy not too long ago. Because of that, despite the fact that they did win a race with Chase Elliott, and they picked up some wins, I believe other drivers throughout the sport, like Alan Kulwicki in the history of the sport, Hooters is no longer sponsoring NASCAR currently at the moment because of the stuff going on, and plus a lot of money trouble they've been having going on currently at the moment. Now, obviously, the Hooters, they've been replaced by Amazon Prime, which is going to sponsor Chase Elliott for 3 races this year. But when Hooters was announced that they were going to be filing a suit and they were no longer sponsoring Hendrick Motorsports, it was definitely a major, major shock. Again, they were wanting around $1.7 to $1.8 million, which does make a lot of sense. It kind of feels very similar to what happened between Kyle Busch Motorsports and Rev Racing last year when they got into a lawsuit early in the year because obviously Rev Racing was missing a lot of payments with Kyle Busch Motorsports, and this is a very similar thing. And I don't believe this is an uncommon situation in regards to sponsors and lawsuits across not just NASCAR, but other forms of sports and other things as well. I think there was a lawsuit between Haas Factory Team and not Haas Factory, but the Haas F1 team and Rich Energy many years ago, I'm pretty sure. And I think that when you think of this situation for Hooters, it is really unfortunate that there was a lawsuit that had to come up because they weren't wanting to pay Hendrick Motorsports the money that they deserve. But it's also really disappointing because of the uncertainty of Hooters' future right now. It's really unknown at this time what their future really is going to be. And I don't think they're ever going to be back in NASCAR because I don't think they want to go into this situation until Hooters can find a way to get the money in, unless some sort of subsidiary company can come in and buy them up and kind of keep Hooters going, because I think that's what Hooters' future is currently at the moment. We've lost a lot of big sponsors over the last couple years. Obviously, FedEx left in recent years. M&M's an iconic brand. They left in recent years. And now Hooters is another big company that's left. The Pepsi brands have left in recent years. And Dr. Pepper, which was in the sport for a long time and sponsored Bubba Wallace a couple years ago, they're no longer sponsoring in the sport as well. You think about Aflac when they sponsor like Carl Edwards for many years, they're really no longer associated with the sport at all anymore. And you think about other big companies like 3M and all these other companies that work with Chase Elliott not too long ago. Now you've got Hooters that's no longer going to be sponsoring Chase Elliott or any car in NASCAR currently at the moment. So it is a major loss for the sport as a whole, but at the same time, you've got to pay. And if you're not paying, there's a very good chance and possibility you're going to go into some sort of lawsuit. So really unfortunate situation as a whole that it kind of got to this, but it's also great to see the Hooters is paying the money that they need to be paying because they absolutely should be paying money. And if they're not, that's a major disappointment on their front, in my honest opinion. Really disappointing had to come to this, but I'm not surprised or shocked, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Sam Mayer and Kyle Larson. Now, If you watch the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Homestead-Miami Speedway, you had Kyle Larson in the field. Now, Kyle Larson obviously won the Cup Series race earlier today, and he also won the Truck Series race a couple nights ago on Friday after passing Corey Heim and Lane Riggs late, and also won the Cup race by passing Alex Bowman late in the event as well. But Kyle Larson could have had the chance and opportunity to sweep the weekend, and it looked very easy like he was going to sweep the weekend. However, despite the fact that Kyle Larson had a near 17-second lead over Sam Mayer, a caution comes out with 8 laps to go when their base Taylor Gray ends up spinning out, running around 10th position. He spins out on the front straightaway after might have been some contact with Jeb Burton or might have been a flat tire. We're not entirely sure, but he was spun to the inside of infield, bringing out the caution when he spun out on the front straightaway. Now, Larson would easily win the race off of pit road and would restart on the inside with Austin Hill on the outside. Now, Sam Mayer had actually come off of pit road in second position and came out in second. However, Sam Mayer said on the radio and radio communication with Surface that he basically said, I was going to go behind Kyle Larson. I don't give a crap. I'm going to send him in turn number 1. I don't really care. Well, going into the final restart of the race, Kyle Larson is the one who gets to control the restart and where he goes. I'm not entirely sure. It might have looked like Austin Hill may have jumped the restart, but I'm not really frustrated with Austin Hill here. On the restart, Sam Mayer completely mistimes the restart and just drills Kyle Larson multiple times in the back, jacks him up, makes him spin his tires, and Austin Hill and Justin Allgaier are able to break the way, and they're able to move up to first and second. And Kyle Larson and Sam Mayer, they're battling side by side for third, and they let the race get away from them. And Justin Allgaier is able to come off the corner, win the $100,000 dash for cash, beating Sam Mayer, who ends up finishing second. And Kyle Larson, who led 134 laps in the race, has nothing to show for it and finishes in 4th position. After the race had concluded, Kyle Larson, you could tell, was really, really frustrated with what happened there. He basically was interviewed and said, a lot of people are going to say I choked this race away, but that was Sam Mayer who's jacking me up multiple times. I can't go if you're pushing me in the back. Sam Mayer also reacted to this situation as well by saying, that definitely is my fault, and I do take responsibility. I really screwed that one up. He also said that Kyle Larson was playing games on the restart, which I don't completely agree with that. Larson is the guy who controls the restart. You just anticipated you made a big mistake. Again, he took accountability. It looked like a little bit, but Sam Mayer did a big thing here. Now, Sam Mayer can say what he wants and says he did what he had to do to win races. But in this situation, he didn't have to do that where he got behind Larson and jacked up his rear tires. Sam Mayer could have restarted on the outside. Now, I get that Sam Mayer is wanting to start behind Larson because he thinks he can give a good push and maybe force Larson to turn number 1 and pass him. And I get the outside had not had really good restarts all day, but you just jacked up him up multiple times. It was a really bonehead move by Sam Mayer. And not only cost Sam Mayer a shot at winning the race after having the second best car and being one of the only guys that could keep up with Kyle Larson all day, but he also screwed the dominant car out of a win. And I think for Sam Mayer, he's still a young driver, and I think that there's definitely a lot of cleaning up that needs to be done. But again, like I said, he is a young driver, and he made a really, really big mistake. But I understand why Larson was frustrated after the race concluded, because Kyle Larson had this race handed to him. He basically had this race completely won, and as much as I was happy Justin Allgaier picked up the win, Justin Allgaier got gifted a win because Sam Mayer was a little bit impatient on the restart. And what also frustrates me is Sam Mayer last year was going on and saying that I should be in a Cup car. I deserve to be in a Cup Series car after winning at Iowa Speedway. Stuff like this is a reason why Sam Mayer is not in a Cup car currently at the moment. And I think Sam Mayer is a very talented race car driver. He's proved it. He's shown it time and time again with how talented he is. But he also, from time to time, will make some of the dumbest moves and make a lot of bad mistakes, and it's cost him chances and opportunities to get Cup rides. He was in the running for a front row car, but they chose Zane Smith because Zane Smith's more clean, and I think he's a more talented driver than Sam Mayer currently at the moment. So I really hope down the road Sam Mayer can clean this up. He's going to win races this year. He finished second, but he's got to not make mistakes like that, because stuff like that is going to cost him chances and opportunities to be in really good cars going forward, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, I was not able to get to this story earlier in the week, but Kyle Busch was on the Happy Harvick podcast, and they talked about a lot of really interesting things. Talked about Kyle Busch becoming an older driver, talked about where Rich Cho's Racing is currently at the moment, which he says at RCR is a lot more ahead than where they were in 2024. But Kyle Busch talked about the younger drivers in the field and specifically talked about Carson Hocevar. And this got a lot of attention from this segment. Kyle Busch would go on and talk about Carson Hocevar. Now, if you go back to what happened at Atlanta Motor Speedway, Kyle Busch, you could tell, was very frustrated at Carson Hocevar during the race. Basically, radio communication was surfaced at the end of, I believe, stage number 1, where Carson Hocevar would go up and try to block Kyle Busch, going down the back straightaway, and that would force Kyle Busch to almost get into the outside wall, and he was not very happy, saying that you better tell the 77 that if he does that again, he's going to wreck him. He says he doesn't care, he will wreck him. He doesn't care if the whole pack ends up getting clobbered. Now, many people were very much frustrated with some of Kyle Busch's comments there. But Carson Hocevar and Kyle Busch, apparently according to Kyle, they have a little bit of a rivalry that goes back to nearly 10 years ago. So apparently, when Kyle Busch was racing at Kalamazoo, around the time I think it was 2017 or 2018, when Carson Hocevar was around 13 or 14 years old at that time, they were racing each other at Kalamazoo. And Kyle Busch and Carson Hocevar are battling side by side. Apparently going down the front straightaway, Kyle Busch was put into the wall by Carson Hocevar. And Kyle Busch was not very happy about it, and he said, "What was that? What is he doing?" And apparently it sounded like Kyle Busch may have tried to go talk to Carson Hocevar about it, but he also said that Carson, it seemed like, did not want to listen. And he says that Carson Hocevar has not learned anything from it. As for Carson Hocevar, we'll get to him in just a second, but also Kyle Busch talked a little bit about as well, about his conversation with Tony Stewart. He said that when Kyle Busch was a lot younger, he went to Tony Stewart to try to get a little bit of advice and clean up some of the antics he had on the track. Now for Carson Hocevar is in the same position that Kyle Busch was in many, many years ago when Kyle Busch, he was a young driver, because Kyle Busch used to be the mentee, and now Kyle Busch is the mentor. He's been a mentor for drivers like Chris Bell and William Byron, who are now, in my opinion, two of the cleanest drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series currently at the moment. That really isn't Carson Hocevar, though, currently at the moment. Now, for Kyle Busch, and some people are going to say, have you tried to talk to him, like Aric mentioned on his video? And I will say this, I do think that Kyle has probably tried to approach Carson Hocevar. Remember, Kyle Busch has association with the Spire Motorsports team, because the Kyle Busch Motorsports shop is where Spire is at currently at the moment. And Kyle Busch goes in there every week because he works as an advisor for the organization, and of course he makes starts for their Truck Series program. So he's around Carson Hocevar probably every single week and sees Carson in the shop. I think for Kyle Busch, he probably should talk to Carson a little bit more. But I also understand where Kyle Busch's frustration comes from at this moment, right? Because I do understand why Kyle Busch is frustrated with Carson. And I've seen people defend Carson Hocevar quite a bit. And do I think that Carson Hocevar is a very, very talented driver? Absolutely, 100%. But Carson Hocevar has done some things that are kind of unforgivable and questionable. Some have said that he hasn't done anything in the Cup Series since getting up there because he was really reckless in the Truck Series. And while, yes, it's not been as infrequent as it was in the Truck Series, where he's spinning out and trying to bring out cautions like he was in trucks multiple times, and then, of course, trying to wreck people and right-rear people and wrecking Corey Heim at the championship race, he's done some things that are very questionable in Cup. Backing up during qualifying at Watkins, going to nearly clobbering people. People forget that because he had a great run and finished inside the top 5. But what people forget is that he nearly caused a big wreck during qualifying in practice at Watkins Glen. And then right rear and Harrison burned down the straightaway under caution. Pretty stupid if you ask me from Carson Hocevar. But you also got to remember Carson Hocevar is a very young driver. A lot of legends in the sport were kind of in the same position that Carson Hocevar was. Kyle Busch was. Kurt Busch was. People like Carl Edwards were. People like Kyle Larson, who are a little bit older now, they were in the same position being younger. Chase Elliott, same thing. Bubba Wallace, same thing. I think, and Ross is saying a little bit too, and Ross has kind of been there to help Carson along the way. To me, when it comes to Kyle Busch's comments about Carson Hocevar, I completely understand Kyle Busch's frustration with Carson. But I think that Carson will clean it up eventually. Maybe Kyle Busch can talk to him a little bit more, and that'd be something he might want to do. But I think that some people defending Carson all the way, I don't completely agree with that, because I think there's definitely some things that Carson can definitely learn, especially about a little bit of better driving standards. But I guess the aggression's worked out, even though Kyle Busch is ahead of Carson Hocevar, I think in the points right now currently at the moment, or it's very close in the standings. But I think for Carson, he needs to clean up some of the antics on the track, and I understand Kyle Busch's frustration because the younger drivers, they don't show as much respect to the older drivers, but that's been nothing new in the sport's history. There's also a little bit more of that lack of respect, but I will say right now in trucks, we're seeing a lot more of that cleaned up. You think about Corey Heim and Raj and the way they race in trucks, those are drivers that are definitely turning the ship, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Homestead-Miami Speedway. Now, of course, we raced this past weekend at Homestead-Miami Speedway, but before racing got going on the track on Friday, there's been a lot of rumors and speculation in regards to Homestead-Miami Speedway's future. And it looks like that there's a very good chance and possibility that Homestead-Miami Speedway may be hosting the championship race in 2026. Now, apparently there was something that had surfaced and leaked on social media. The NASCAR Massage account had posted this as well. Many people in the industry and many people who were on the page, and it was surfacing that it looks like that the championship race may be taking place on November 1st, and that is when Homestead might be taking place. This isn't like your normal renewal thing. When you go to the website, a lot of times you get those renewal things for 2026. It looks like this has been updated for November 1st. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of rumors and speculation about the 2026 schedule. We do know there's a lot of talk right now that Phoenix could be hosting their final championship race in 2025, and it sounds like Homestead is the front runner to take the championship race in 2026. We do know NASCAR is in a lot of talks to have a rotating championship starting in the 2026 year, but it seems like right now that Homestead is the favorite for the championship. We do know the facility needs a lot of updates. There's no denying that and no question. It sounds like that if they do get approval to be the championship race next year, it sounds like they are going to be looking to do a lot of renovations and a lot of reapproving of the track. Because we all know the racing at Homestead-Miami Speedway is amazing, but the facility needs to be updated. But if they get the facility updated and looking like it did in the early 2000s, Homestead will be the perfect championship venue. Because as much as we talk about Phoenix being a fantastic facility, we need to talk about the racing product, because when you compare the racing product at Phoenix compared to Homestead-Miami Speedway, the racing isn't even close. Homestead always puts on some really exciting racing. Look at the racing this weekend, for example. Sure, you look at the Xfinity racing, Kyle Larson dominated that, but you had really good racing throughout the field and multiple opportunities to move through the field. Same with the Truck Series race, for example. The truck race, one of the best races I've ever seen, and the racing was straight up great. And you think about the Cup race, it was a very entertaining race as well. A bad race at Homestead normally also is way better than a normal Phoenix race. Phoenix generally does not put on the best racing. And I get that some people want it to be part of some sort of championship thing, but Homestead should be the championship race at least for next year. Now, if they're going to do championship rotations on the venues, I want to see Homestead be part of it. You probably would have to include Phoenix because of the weather, unfortunately, even though it should not be a championship race. I think Kansas needs to be included because Kansas Speedway always puts on fantastic racing, and the next-gen car always races good. They're in all three series, have put on a great show. But Homestead-Miami Speedway needs to be the number one considered date because I think Homestead is a fantastic racetrack. Again, I talk about renovations, and again, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in regards to renovations to the facility and the track, but I want to see this track host in the championship. The racing is way too good not to be there. And it was frustrating to me when they moved Homestead to earlier in the year last year. However, from what a lot of people were saying, one of the reasons they moved it to early in the year in the first place for 2025 was so that they ain't going to try to get renovations done, because if you look at the dates in correlation, it's about 18 months. And those renovations are going to need to be come in very, very soon. Now, again, the government in Homestead, which it sounds like they're really trying to work on it, and the president of Homestead, which has taken over in the last couple months, they really are pushing very, very heavily to have Homestead be the finale of next year. And I want that to be the case because when Homestead was a season finale years ago, from 2003 or 2002 or something like that, up until 2019, it felt like an actual championship venue. Now, obviously, the racing in 02 wasn't great at the track, but from 2003 really up until 2019, the racing was always really, really good. And Homestead-Miami Speedway is an awesome and very, very fun racetrack. And I think this track will put on a fantastic season finale, because when you go to Phoenix, you've got one driver or one team like Team Penske right now who's figured out the setups and figured out the track, and they've won pretty much every single championship. But when you go to Homestead, you're always going to get the best of the best up front. You think about last year's race, the great battle between Tyler Reddick, Ryan Blaney, and Denny Hamlin. 3 drivers trying to make their way to the championship 4. They all put on a great show, and it was one of the best races of all time. You think about the race today, Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, Bubba Wallace, Alex Bowman, Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick, William Byron. Some of the best drivers in NASCAR Cup competition right now up front, battling for the lead and generally putting on a fantastic and great show. And you got arguably the best talented guy going out there and winning the race earlier today. To me, Homestead-Miami Speedway needs to be the championship race for next year. It's a great facility. It's a fantastic racetrack. And it's just a track that needs a little bit of love, because they've taken a lot of seats down. But if you do a lot of renovations, you can add new seats, get that venue up quite a bit. And it seems like, unlike a couple years ago, the city is definitely getting behind Homestead, because if this track really isn't a season finale, there's just no one that shows up, unfortunately. Look at the crowd today. The race was awesome, but the crowd just wasn't there, which is a shame, because it seems like people don't support it. But it seems like the people that are in the city councils, among other things, they are supporting it currently at the moment. But this track for sure needs to be the season finale. It's a perfect venue for the championship. The racing's great. The city is in a solid position. The ratings generally are really, really good in the area for this event. And I really think it's just a fun and great racetrack, all things considered. So I really hope it truly does become the season finale. It does sound like I already mentioned, that it's very likely going to happen where it is a season finale next year, because you hear conversations. You hear people like Ryan Blaney saying we need 2 track races here. And I would agree. I like to see 2 races at Homestead, to be honest. But if it's a championship race, it should only have 1 date. And then you think about other people like Chase Elliott and other people in the industry that are in support of making this season finale. It always put on a great show. I go back to 2011, the great battle between Carl Edwards and Tony Stewart. 2004, the iconic battle. You think about other races like 03 when Bobby Labonte passed Bill Elliott when he had a flat tire. You think about all the iconic great battles and great racing we've seen in any type of car, regardless of the car. The racing's always great here. I really hope Homestead is truly the championship race next year, because it definitely deserves to be the championship race, in my honest opinion. So, that is going to be today's Law NASCAR News and Motorsports News episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Listeners below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What are your thoughts about Kyle Busch calling out Carson Hocevar on the Happy Harvick podcast? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And do you think Homestead will host a championship race next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, we're going to have the intros video for the race at Martinsville. We're going to have the Truck Series race picks for Martinsville as well. Then, of course, on Wednesday, we're going to have the Xfinity Series race picks, and we should have a NASCAR news video dropping as well. Then on Thursday, we're going to have Cup picks for Martinsville. And then, of course, we are also going to likely have the paint scheme video dropping. And then Friday, we should have a NASCAR news video dropping, and we'll have reactions to the NASCAR Truck Series race and probably reactions to Xfinity Series qualifying as well. We've got a lot of great videos coming out this week. Some great fun stuff coming out. I'm looking forward to share it on the channel. Other people like Haiden Deegan, Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Shane Van Gisbergen, Connor Zillich, Jr. Motorsports, Aric Almirola, Chandler Smith, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, all that good stuff. Clay Safari, Matt Benedetto, Dodge, Ford, Honda. We'll talk about all that on the channel in the coming days. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.